Here's something nobody tells you when you start earning more money. You can feel worse about your finances than you did when you were broke. Not worse because the math is worse. Worse because the gap between what you earn and what you feel you deserve to feel about money gets wider. And that gap produces a specific kind of shame that is quieter, harder to name, and in many ways more paralyzing than simple financial stress. Marcus makes $94,000 a year, software development firm, mid-level role, benefits, 401k. He's 33. By almost every external metric, he's doing well. His parents are proud. His college friends think he figured it out. But in private, Marcus spends an uncomfortable amount of time thinking about money in ways that produce no clarity, no plan, no movement forward. He checks his bank account. He opens his investment app. He reads a few articles about money. And then he closes everything and feels worse than before he started. It's not anxiety about not having enough. It's something more subtle than that. It's the feeling that he's failing at money in some way he can't articulate. That someone who earns what he earns should have it more together than he does. That feeling has a name, financial shame, and it works very differently from financial stress. Financial stress is about the gap between what you have and what you need. It has a clear cause and responds to practical interventions. Financial shame is about the gap between what you have and what you believe you're supposed to have figured out by now. It doesn't respond to information or better budgeting. It responds to meaning-making, and most people never address it. Because it doesn't feel like a financial problem, it feels like a personal failing. The research on this is more explicit than most people know. Brené Brown's work on shame documents a consistent pattern. Shame about any topic produces avoidance, and avoidance produces exactly the outcomes that intensify the shame. The man who feels ashamed that he hasn't built savings doesn't start tracking his money more carefully. He avoids looking at his finances, which means the savings don't grow, which increases the shame, which increases the avoidance. It's a closed loop, and information doesn't break it. What breaks it is something else entirely. But before I get there, I need to show you how the shame spiral gets constructed in the first place, because understanding the mechanism is the first step to stepping outside of it. Marcus grew up in a household where money was talked about in two registers. The first was scarcity. There wasn't enough. You had to be careful. You couldn't afford that. The second was aspiration. If you worked hard, got the right degree, landed a good job, you'd be okay. The implicit promise was that a certain income would produce a certain peace of mind. The specific number was never stated, but the feeling was clear. Financial anxiety was for people who hadn't made it yet. If you made it, you wouldn't feel like this. Marcus made it, and he still feels like this. The shame isn't just about money. It's about the broken promise, the degree, the job, the salary, and he still checks his account at 11 p.m. with that familiar low-grade dread. The system failed him, or, more accurately, the system never delivered what it implicitly promised, and he doesn't know how to metabolize that without blaming himself. This is where high earners often get stuck in a way that lower earners don't. The higher your income, the harder it is to locate the problem outside yourself. If someone who earns $35,000 a year is struggling financially, there's an obvious external explanation. When someone who earns $94,000 a year is struggling psychologically with money, despite being objectively comfortable, the only story available is, this is a personal failing. And that story produces shame. Before we go further, let me show you something I built specifically for the moment we're in right now. It's called the Kit Mente Livre, 3 tools that work together on different layers of this problem. The ebook is 35 pages of real behavioral financial diagnosis, not tips to save more, but a map of the invisible patterns that keep men with stable incomes stuck. The Stability Cost Calculator is an interactive tool. You input your actual numbers, and it shows you the real cost of inaction, in wealth not built, in time spent, in freedom delayed. And the Mente Livre series is 3 audio tracks between 7 and 12 minutes, designed for mornings or nights, working identity, value, and action where knowledge alone doesn't reach. All 3 work together. The ebook builds intellectual awareness, the calculator builds emotional awareness, the audios work on identity, not a course, no monthly fee, lifetime access, everything for $37. The link is in the description. When you're ready, back to the shame spiral. Here's what's actually happening in Marcus's 11 p.m. account checking ritual. He's not looking for information. He knows what's in the account. He's looking for relief. And the act of checking produces a brief moment of contact with the anxiety, followed by renewed avoidance, because the number never says what he actually needs to hear. The number can't say it, because the number is not the problem. The problem is that Marcus has no framework for what his financial situation means. He has metrics, balance, rate, contributions, debt to income. But metrics without meaning produce anxiety, not clarity. He needs to answer a question that no spreadsheet addresses. What does being financially okay actually look like for someone like me at this point in my life, given where I'm trying to go? That's not a math question. That's an identity question. And it's one that most financial content never asks, because it's easier to provide formulas than to help someone figure out what they actually want their financial life to mean. When Marcus sat down and tried to answer that question honestly, not what's the right answer, but what do I actually want, he realized something that surprised him. He didn't particularly want to be rich. He wanted to feel like he had enough runway to take a professional risk without destroying his life. He wanted to be able to say yes to things that mattered without immediately calculating whether he could afford to. He wanted to stop the 11 p.m. ritual. That was the first time he'd defined his financial goal in terms of a feeling rather than a number, and it changed everything about how he engaged with money. Because for the first time, the target was something he could actually track his progress toward. Not have X saved, but feel Y when I think about money. The specific threshold that produced that feeling turned out to be a 6-month emergency fund and the ability to reduce his work hours by 20% without financial panic. That wasn't a random number. It was the specific amount of runway that made the risk he wanted to take feel survivable. You might have a completely different answer, but you can't find your answer until you ask the question, and you can't ask the question clearly until you detach enough from the shame to treat your financial life as information rather than evidence of your worth. Here's where most people make the move that keeps the spiral going. They hear something like this. They get some clarity about what they actually want, and then they build a plan, a good plan, specific, realistic, achievable, and then they execute the plan for about 2.5 weeks before a stressful period at work, or an unexpected expense, or just a Tuesday evening where the energy isn't there, and the plan stops, and the shame doubles, because now they've failed the plan too. The reason this keeps happening isn't discipline failure. It's that the plan was built on top of the unresolved shame. The plan assumes you're starting from neutral. You're not starting from neutral. You're starting from a place where money carries years of failed promises and self-criticism. That weight doesn't go away because you open a new spreadsheet. What actually addresses the shame is a different move, taking one concrete action, however small, that contradicts the story you've been telling yourself about your relationship with money. Not a plan, an action today. Marcus's first action was closing the 11 p.m. account checking. Just that. He set a rule: no financial apps after 9 p.m. It sounds almost trivially small, but what it did was create the first piece of evidence that he could have a different relationship with money anxiety. Not eliminate the anxiety, just not feed it at 11 p.m. And the evidence that the ritual could change created the smallest possible amount of space for the next evidence and the next. 4 months later, Marcus had an emergency fund, a one-sentence financial purpose statement, and no 11 p.m. ritual, not because he found financial discipline, because he found a way to stop treating his finances as a referendum on his worth. The shame spiral doesn't dissolve with information. It dissolves with consistent evidence that you have agency over your relationship with money, not just the money itself. One question: what story are you telling yourself about what your financial situation says about you? Write it in the comments. You don't have to share the number, just the story. Because the story is where the work actually is. If what you heard here made sense, the Kit Mente Livre goes deeper. The link is in the description. You watched this far because something here rang true. That's not nothing. That's the beginning of something different.